I will call the meeting to order at 7:10. And I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. Lisa.
Moved by Councillor Clark.
Was that seconded?
Yes. Councillor Wilder, did you have any motions you wanted to?
I do. I would like to amend this agenda to remove at this time item 6.1. And that was my report for talking about the docks on New Group Wharfs. My notice of motion for new docks in Bedwell Bay. After much discussion this week with council and our councillors and a number of other people, this is going to be brought forward to our strategic planning meeting, and we think that there has to be some more discussion brought forward with it. So I would just like it removed from today and brought forward hopefully to the next council meeting or the one directly after that, which is post our strategic plan meeting. Is that acceptable?
Okay, so I've got a mover, Lisa Wilder, and do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Clark. So the motion is on the table that it would be amended with the removal of that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it is carried in the affirmative. Okay, and then we go to, thank you for that. And the adoption of minutes for the oath of office ceremony and inaugural meeting on February 8th, 2021. So I'm looking for someone to move it. Councillor
So moved.
Wilder moved and seconded. Councillor
Seconded.
Great. So, and in front of you, it's at the minutes from the oath of office ceremony and the inaugural council meeting held February 8th, 2021 be adopted. Any discussion, comments?
Sorry to interrupt here. I noticed that Jim Chisholm has a hand up and had the hand up a few moments ago.
Okay, so let me do this. I didn't see that. So what I will do is we will finish on this and then we'll go back and hear from Jim or Sherry Chisholm. Okay?
It was at the point of 6.1 that I believe the hand went up on the screen. It was when you were introducing Councillor Wilder's motion to delay six. Yeah.
Okay. So
you were talking about amending the agenda for this evening, and you were talking particularly about 6.1, and at that point,
right,
I believe.
Okay, so
his hand went up.
Yeah, and so what I've said is that I will go back to, I saw the Chisholms. I've now seen another one, but we're on a motion right now, so I'm going to ask for us to continue and to finish that motion, please. So, any discussion on the motion for the oath of office? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? None. The motion carries in the affirmative. So, Jim Chisholm or Sherry Chisholm?
Oh, hi there. I wanted to know, this strategic planning meeting, is that an open public meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. And then I have David Chulistani.
Yeah, because I was wondering if, is that because there's a conflict of interest in regards to that motion?
No.
I'm excited to have this come forward. We just want more information. That's come up in some discussions. We just want more time.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, because since it's directly affecting Marine Avenue residents, there should be a public hearing in regards to that matter with the Marine Avenue residents, right?
Not a public hearing. Public meetings, all council meetings are public meetings. Public hearings only happen when there's a bylaw change, from my understanding. But public meetings are all council meetings are public meetings, and we want to have as many as possible regarding this.
Okay, thank you, David. And I have another hand up and then we'll look to move on after that if we could, please. And I would assume Ben Shul is short for Ben Shulistani, is that correct?
Hello, can you hear me, Mayor Jamie?
I can.
Okay. Yes, I had a concern about the motion that Councillor Wilder wants to pass. I believe that all Marine Avenue residents must be notified about such a motion because it directly impacts Marine Avenue residents. So I believe that you should first inform all Marine Avenue residents and have their concerns heard before passing such a major motion.
So,
So what I mean by that is that some of the key issues that are not addressed in the motion that Councillor Weidel has drafted include traffic issues, parking issues, noise issues, privacy issues, security issues, safety issues, and these are among other issues. For example, how can we basically not allow Marine Avenue residents access the water, but have people from other parts of Belcarra basically get the guests, basically, I don't know, Councillor Wilder actually can maybe explain.
well, what I'm
People
gonna,
who have guests bringing to the docks, can we allow them to have access to the dock and yet not allow Marine Avenue residents themselves have access to the water? So this
Okay.
is completely unfair.
okay, so what I want to do is thank you for your question. Note that it is not on the agenda tonight. And note that Councillor Wilder has heard it. And when it does come onto the agenda, you, like other people in the village, will be welcome to come on and to voice your thought. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. And we'll move on right now.
So,
to-
sorry, Mayor Ross, will you be informing Marine Avenue residents before passing such a motion to make sure their concerns are heard?
So this actual item isn't on the table tonight, but we've heard your concerns. And I would assume that all of council has been listening, and we will look to do things and we will put them out in front of the public. And our meetings are in public and we're very comfortable about that. So at this point, I'm going to move on to, we have an item. Chris Boyd, sorry, my apologies, Chris, giving a verbal update. So if you could, I just want to confirm Chris is here, correct?
Yep.
Yep, good. Thank you, Chris. So if you could go ahead, please.
Thank you, Worship.
Welcome.
Unfortunately, I don't have too much detail for you at this point in time. I spoke again with the district at the end of last week regarding their process and where they're at with their review of water supply to Belcarra, and actually it's now become an even larger issue for them because they're now reviewing water supply with regards to the First Nations at this point in time. So they're even further behind than what they were thinking originally. So now they inform me that they think they're more or less through the modeling side of things and have calibrated their model, and they're pretty close to be able to give us an answer. When you ask me how close is close, I've been told close has been close for quite some time. So I'm still hoping again within the next few weeks to receive the information from the district and then be able to provide the final report to the village.
Okay, so so your sense is it's close, and I understand that they're doing some piece with the First Nations, but you've been said the modeling's close, and it sounds like it's close in weeks. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, and is that, and that's the extent of the report you're providing us, Chris?
Yeah, at this point in time, until I get the information from the district, there isn't really much more to progress until we have that information from the district.
Okay,
So I'm not too sure if it's the same as an agenda item, but we have recently started the process of updating what we call the SOPs for the reservoir and the pump stations and whatnot, which was requested, I believe last month or Lorna can correct me if I'm incorrect, but recently, so we just started that process. So we're just in the process of getting that going now as well.
Okay. So I've got a question from Jim Chisholm. I'm going to reserve a spot for in the latter part of this discussion, however long it takes or happens. But at this point, the one hand I see is Jim Chisholm or
No.
Sherry Chisholm. Oh, no?
No, actually, you just didn't take my hand down before when I spoke. I
Oh,
don't-
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, and I think it's,
Take my hand down.
I think it's under reactions at the bottom there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. And it actually kind of curious, me offering you tech advice, because most people wouldn't assume I'd be the best person, but thank you. You look like you've done it well, even. remotely.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Sherry. Do we have any questions from counselors? Okay. I also want to look to, I know we have Ian Devlin, who's with our water committee. I want to thank Ian and the members of that committee for their work. Did you have any questions or anything, Ian? You don't have,
You're muted, Ian.
There, I don't know if you can hear me.
Now we
Okay.
can, thanks.
Okay, good. No, I don't have any major questions. I just was interested if Chris could explain what SOPs in particular he's working on.
Yeah, the reservoir and the pump house.
Those are the two, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and what specifically are you looking at there? Are you looking at the components or?
Everything, to be perfectly frank. So from, SOPs are a bit different from what people would normally think of as the manuals. So we've reviewed the manuals, but what we're really doing is going through a checklist for the operators to be able to show if this alarm goes off, this is what it actually means, and here's how you deal with it in the future. That's a general answer.
Okay, I don't have anything specific right now because I think I know you're looking at the manual, the maintenance and the operation for the system, the water system. So are you considering any of the maintenance issues?
Well, with the maintenance side of things, it's more a very general overview, because that's why you have the operating manuals, which will tell you exactly what the maintenance requirements are. And, each are about 3 inches thick, right? So there's a lot to go through. So, it's kind of more of a cursory. These are the things that you should be looking for more than the technical breakdown of each one.
Okay, I don't have anything right now. Thanks,
Okay.
Jamie.
okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Ian and Chris. Any other comments from any counselors, anybody in the gallery? Bruce Drake, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I just one item, Chris, and that is, and I appreciate you don't have it yet, but when you do hear from the District of North Vancouver, is your expectation is that they will deal with relatively low flow increases as well as some of the more heroic asks we've made?
My apologies for muting myself. My dog was barking. The answer is yes. So what we're trying to really do here is we set some initial values. And what I really want to do is have a conversation with the district regarding what's really, let's say, cost effective in the answers of what can we get for relatively little cost increase. And then as we've talked through the past year or so, there's what I would call the monumental increases. What would that be and what would that look like for cost? So what I'm trying to find is perhaps the most cost-effective point, and then the more, here's your millions of dollars of upgrades kind of points.
Okay, and just following up, yeah, as we discussed before, my calculations indicate something in the 30s would do us a great deal. Okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. And I'm seeing Deborah Struck with your hand up, and thank you for assisting with someone earlier on. Much appreciated.
Oh, you're welcome. I just am wondering, is there any way, who is it to put the heat on? I've known for many, many months in council meetings that council has been asking and asking and asking for information from Chris and North Vancouver. So why such a long delay in trying to get the same kinds of questions answered? And I don't know if this question needs to go to Lorna or to Chris or to whom it needs to, but I would guess that council is feeling, are you fatigued with the delay and asking the same question over and over again, or what's happening? So that's it.
So I will take that, and thank you, Deborah Struck. You've put it through to the chair, and I'll refer it through you. Thank you to, I think the order will go with Chris, and then if Lorna wants to respond to that too. Okay? Chris?
Sure. I suppose my answer to Deborah is I don't have a big stick that I can really beat them with. It is a typical, we would typically be requesting this from another consultant or something along those lines, as it's the district. And we're not paying the district for anything either. It's kind of hard to push them along. Perhaps there's a political avenue that we could take. However, that isn't my realm of expertise.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
And, yes, Your Worship, and I would just mention too that I may have mentioned this before, but the big municipalities, they're really affected by COVID and they have fewer staff at work, and it's not the same out there for the big municipalities during COVID.
Okay. So to appreciate both your comments, and there's a little piece that two important things. One, the cooperation from the District of North End working with us, and the piece about the municipalities during COVID are split up their staffs because of issues of physical distancing. And in addition, we know that most of the larger municipalities have taken direct revenue drops because of things like recreation centers. So Deborah, we've given you the best on those questions. So thank you for posing them. And Sherry, or wait a second. I think I have one hand right now. Sherry? Oh, you're muted.
How about now? Yes, there we are.
You're good.
Do you think it's possible if we sent Councillor Drake and possibly Ian Devlin, who's the head of the water committee, to North Van for a little chitty chat, that maybe dealing at that level, we would get better results than say sending a consultant to, maybe he's just, I don't know, maybe he's speaking to the engineering department. If you had a little higher level meeting with our leader, Ian Devlin, and Bruce as our liaison.
And Your Worship, I would just interject here and say that I have been in touch with DNV also in this regard.
Yeah, but it's not the same as the elected official.
True. Yeah.
Okay. So let me do this piece if I can. Lorna, thank you for your comment. Sherry, thank you for your question. And I saw two hands go up and maybe a third. I don't know if Chris, you were up for a bit, but I have Bruce and Ian, and I'll keep watching for other hands. Okay. So Bruce, we'll go with you if that's all right.
Yes.
And then we'll go over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sherry, for the suggestion. I do think encouragement at the political level may at some point be helpful, but I rather think it's probably best done on the margins of Metro meetings. Now, mind you, I'm thinking of that in terms of face-to-face meeting. So I'm not sure to what degree you can network Jamie and Carolina in terms of Zoom calls. That may be much more limited today, but I can tell you my experience in the past has been that that's where you probably get the most mileage from this sort of thing, where you're talking with the mayor, you're talking with a council member at the DN District of North Vancouver.
Yeah.
But do take from Chris's note that well, sometimes one feels a little like Charlie Brown with the football, right? But it does sound like we're getting closer, and they're not going to take the ball away this time.
Okay, and then Ian,
And it's not.
Oh, really?
so we'll go to Ian Devlin. And Sherry, go ahead, please.
Is it my turn?
Yes, it is. Please. Thank you,
Okay,
Ian.
one of the frustrations the water committee's been having is that we're not sure what question the village has asked the District of North Vancouver to answer. We don't know who asked the question and what the question was and when it was posed. We've been asking on March 1st, this next month is going to be 2 years that we've been asking for this information.
Okay, so okay, so let me,
Right there.
if there's an answer, we will look to that, but I also want to pass on to Ian as the chair of the committee and the other members of the water committee. When I hear those numbers and how long, I'm very, very concerned. But one of the things I want to do as a new council going forward is to commit that if we can receive those questions in writing from the water committee, and we will undertake going forward to answer those. And I'm not the best person to comment on what has happened before or those pieces, and I'm not prone to go back and sift and try and say this should or may have happened or whatever. But I want, on behalf of our council and on behalf of our chief administrative officer, to say going forward that if we get those in writing, we will respond in writing. And I want to preface it that there may be ones that do not meet all the needs of your committee or another that would ask that, but we will do our best to be responding to written questions and to respond to them in writing. And I share concerns. So people ask if we were fatigued. I think someone asked that, and I think we all are. But I'm part of a council that's an existing council and a council going forward. And as we go forward, I think we want to carve out a new way, and that's one of them. So that's a commitment we give you on that, Ian, and to your committee and to other committees. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Carolina, Sherry, do you have your hand up again to ask a question? Okay, thank you. I had some hands up, but they seem to have.
Yeah, you addressed what I was thinking about saying to Mayor Ross. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna essentially test the house. Do we have more speakers on this? Do we have anybody willing or not willing, but on council or anybody else that wants to make a comment? Or are we able, okay, Carolina?
I think it goes with Bruce's comment. I would like to see Chris Boyd also bring back some information on lower flows. Obviously, all to reach a minimum of 60 liters per second. But yeah, I think his response was that he's looking into this as well. Correct, Chris?
Yeah. So in response to Ian's comment earlier, I actually went back to the original email because we met with the district for about an hour and I sent over some clarifications to her. And so the lowest flow we're looking at right now, I had asked her to look for was at 37 liters a second. And Bruce, I think that's pretty close to some of your and mine close numbers that we've kind of gone back and forth with over the.
That is, yeah, in fact, yeah, I was running, yeah, that's exactly it. At 37, we're home free.
Yeah, so I've looked at that's kind of like the lower end, and then we've got into the 60 and then the 100 liters per second. And there's some technical little nuances in there as well, but they're the main questions which were posed back. And I'm sure once I get that information, I have some more questions for them because they'll have what's called a dynamic model, which will mean I can interrogate it with other flows and get a quick answer back. So once we have a generalization of what these will give us, I can then interrogate a little bit more and give us a little bit more nuanced answers.
And
Okay.
just a comment to go back. So I just wanted to reiterate and point out that the 37 that you're talking about, you're looking into also a flow of 37 liters per second inflow from North Vancouver to then, along with our system, reach the 60 liters per second, just to make it clear for the sake of the gallery, okay, to reach out to the goal of, I guess, 60 liters per second. Thank you.
Okay, and I see another hand up. Rob Begg, please.
Yeah, just to comment, I think that I have a real problem with Bruce. I take exception to say that we're home free at 37. If that were the case, the rest of Metro would be 37. The rest of Metro is 60 continuous flow, and I would say that we're home free and equal to everybody at that point. Having been the liaison to the water committee initially, I think that's a miscommunication to the village to say that we're home free at 37. I think affordability wise might be all we can afford, but certainly there's a reason that the rest of Metro all have 60 liters a second.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And so I'm seeing two hands go up. I think I may have caught Bruce's go up first.
Yeah.
And Councillor Clark, did you have your hand up? So we'll go in that order. If we
No, I'm
can.
pretty sure, but please go to Bruce.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Rob, thank you. Yeah, it's an inappropriate use of the term. I appreciate your correction on it. What 37, by my calculations, what 37 liters a second from the District of North Vancouver would do for us is that with our existing tank, we'd be able to deliver the fire flow we had on Turtle Head, which was 63 liters a second coming out of the tank for 90 minutes rather than the 55 that happened during that fire. And in addition, because it's an increased flow from the District of North Vancouver, it doesn't place us in jeopardy in terms of the chlorine levels to the extent that some other options do, i.e. increased storage. And the being able to rechlorinate would be a significant cost. So you're also correct that I'm thinking in terms of affordability. I don't think we disagree, in fact, on your statements. And yeah, maybe I'll substitute the word I'd be happy to live with rather than saying home free.
Thanks for the clarification. Agreed.
Yep.
Okay, and thank you to both of you. Rob, you're good. So I'm going to go to Carolina Clark.
Sorry, no, it was just my previous comment, which is the same as Bruce made. It's just the 37 liters per second of inflow to reach the 60 liters per second for 90 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for those comments. They were helpful. They refined a few things. And right now it looks like I'm not seeing any more hands, not seeing anybody. So we have a motion on the floor. And correct, it's been moved and seconded.
No, it hasn't, Your Worship.
Okay, so we'll look for a mover. Carolina Clark moved, and second, Bruce Straight. Thank you. Okay, so I'll open it up to discussion. We'll go to councillors first. Any discussion from councillors? Okay, so I have John S.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I wondered those
Sorry, Your
discussions
Worship, we need a
regarding
full
water.
name.
Oh,
Yes, John
yeah, my-
Sunny, thank you. So my
Okay,
question,
can I hang on a second, please? I want to be fair to everybody in the room that has their name up as a minimum, and especially to the ones with the videos, but I'm going to move past you now because we've asked you a number of times in fairness to the community members around this table. So when you can get back with your name, your full name. Okay, I'm going to move on then, please. Any other people that would like to, any questions? So council, it's appropriate right now for you to vote on that motion.
so will I get a chance to speak?
Actually, no, in fairness, you can come back later. Appreciate you keeping your name on in fairness to everybody else in the community. So thank you. So
So my
Council-
question was that,
I'm actually not entertaining. We spent 10 minutes at the beginning, and I'd really like people, and I know a lot of people were working through technical difficulties. They were working through adjustments, and you showed us that that was none of it. So I'm going to move on.
I
but
wasn't here
please-
at the beginning, so I didn't hear your instruction.
So right now, the vote is on the floor. So council, all in favor?
Aye.
It carries. Thank you. Okay. So we're on to Ken, our financial consultant, to walk us through that paper. Please.
Item 5.2, right?
Yes, item 5.2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if Paula wants to show the report up on the screen. Is that possible?
She's working on it. She'll do it. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is an important issue. As we see, this issue arose initially as an audit point that the village should look at his allocation of costs to the major road network, or the MRN, which of course is funded through a grant from TransLink. And when we started to take a look at this, the issue is much more broad than just the MRN. It applies to how the village allocates direct and indirect costs to all of its operating funds or areas. And that of course includes the ward, the waste and recycling depot, as well as the water operating fund as well. So if we move down in the report then, please. Let's keep going. So just a little bit up, thank you. The gist of this is that the general operating fund has two types of costs. Direct costs, those are public works staff who work directly in those aforementioned areas. And then we have indirect costs as well that need to be apportioned out to the operating areas so that each is paying its fair share of costs. In that way, you can set fair and reasonable user rates in both the ward area and the water operating area, and you can charge the TransLink grant an appropriate amount to fund the major road network. So when we looked at this, of course, we said to ourselves that the public works staff who work directly in those areas can charge a reasonable amount that they are considered to have worked in those areas or work in those areas at a percentage. And so there was a time and analysis study done, and it was determined that the public works staff who directly work in all the areas, 43.8% of their time was spent in the general operations, 25% in MRN, 28.1% in water, and 3.1% in ward. So those are the direct costs of those people working in those areas. So that is a simple part of it. Now we move on to the indirect costs. And these are things like administration, finance support, council, and in those costs, the general operating fund support those areas of MRN, ward, and water. And so a portion of their budget can be allocated, or costs can be allocated to those all areas. So when we looked at it, we thought that the best and most reasonable way to allocate the general costs that support all areas is through the portion of the budget in each area to the total budget. And so it was determined that about 74% of costs should be allocated to general, 4.86% to MRN, 13.71% to water, and 6.88% to ward. And the most reasonable and simplest way of doing this was based, of course, on the budget in the preceding year. So when we put these numbers into a calculation, will we move down, please? We find that when indirect costs are allocated at 100% right away, there's a huge impact in the areas. So if we could just move down a little bit more, please. So if we went and implemented the 100% allocation of indirect costs according to the budget percentages right away, you would see a drop in costs in the general operating fund of 20%. You would see an increase in water operating costs of 30% for cost allocations and 34% in ward. So we did 3 scenarios. A scenario A, which would allocate the cost at 100% right away. A scenario B, which would allocate 75% of the costs of indirect in those areas. And then the third scenario was the 50% scenario, which only 50% of the allocation would occur right away. The direct costs, of course, would be allocated right away because that is where those people are working. So you can see that there's going to be, if this was done all at once, there would be a very large shift from taxation to user rates in the ward, and MRN would require a lot more grant funds. So the fact of the matter is, we are recommending that this shift be done over 3 years, and that we go with scenario C initially in 2021 at 50% allocation, 75% in 2022, and 100% in 2023. As I say, this is basically a fairness issue, and we have to have time to transfer or allocate costs from general to the 3 other areas, and to require or have a gradual increase in user rates to compensate for the shift in costs. And so that's why we're recommending a 3-year phased transition into allocating the indirect costs. So we have basically done a policy that reflects the allocation of direct and indirect costs and the transition from over a 3-year period. And we're asking that council support this so that we can start fairly accounting for costs in each area, and over time having user rates and the grant funds reflect the true cost of running all areas of the village. I would be happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification that council would like.
Okay, we'll go to council first and then we'll work out if there's other people. Okay. So Bruce Drake, I saw your hand first from council, and John Snell second, please.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ken, for the report. It's very well documented. I just want to deal with, I don't have any questions about the theory involved here, but I am concerned about impact on taxpayers. It seems to me that we're shifting where we allocate these dollars. So I would end up paying more, for example, for Ward, because you're assigning some costs there, and that would be a user fee. I would then see a corresponding drop in my general operations tax effect. So it would be a wash insofar as dollars assigned to Ward. Can you tell me, basically on past practice, how would MRN be impacted by this? Because that's one area where our taxation is indirect. Of course, we pay it to Metro, but then we get back from Metro. So where if we increase the amount assigned to MRN, obviously there'd be a modest decline in terms of our total taxes locally. But if our MRN assigned dollars were low in the past, were high, I'm sorry, and they actually are lowered by this process, then our taxes go up locally. So can you answer that question?
The village receives about, it's just been increased, and they took a hiatus in 2020 because of COVID.
Right.
But they allocate about 113,000 annually to support the MRN road.
Yeah.
And so the village has not traditionally used all those monies in the past, and they are moved into deferred revenue at the end of the year. And so there was approximately 122,000 in deferred revenue at the end of 2019.
Okay.
And so I would expect that the cost in MRN would go up, and more of the annual operating and rehabilitation costs provided by TransLink would be used to their more of their full extent. Now, should in the future we get up to the, when we get up to the 100% level, should our costs for MRN exceed the amount of transfer from TransLink, and it would provide a rationality for the village to seek more funding from TransLink for its MRN road to fund fully the cost of the road.
In the past, I guess the question I'm asking, I thought when I read this, I got the impression that we didn't, that our auditors, or perhaps you, had noted that our rationale for assigning costs to MRN was either lacking or pretty simplistic. Is that true? Were we assigning costs to MRN and doing it in a fashion that didn't impress either you or the auditors?
Yes, that's correct. It was done traditionally and historically according to a percentage. And there was no deep rationale behind it.
So you didn't want to get asked by the auditors to explain the rationale?
No, I thought we would come up with one that could be justified.
Okay, that's fine. That's my only question so far. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And then going to John Snell, and then we'll go to Jim Chisholm and John Schulistan.
Yeah. Hello, Ken, and thank you for your report. It's entirely logical, and I have a rather simple question, and it probably follows on somewhat from what Bruce was saying. When, as a resident, we look at our property tax notices, we notice at the bottom there are municipal utilities, and both the water fee and the recycle fee are a line entry on those tax notices. What impact will these changes make to that? Thank you.
Those flat rates on the tax notices for Ward and water will go up gradually, but they will be offset by a more stable property tax.
Thank you.
Okay, you're finished, John?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll go to Jim or Sherry Chisholm. Did you want your hand down, Sherry?
I think you're on now. There.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I certainly agree with this change in the approach to bookkeeping. But the one thing that's necessary to make it equal to all people, we definitely got to put the water meters into operation and read them. Because that will balance out the water usage properly. If you're going to have a user pay, it should be balanced. And the only way to do that is get the meters working. I mean, we've had 7 or 8 years to get it done. It's time to do it.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Jim. And then I'm gonna go to John Shulistani, and then I'll go to Carolina Clark.
Thank you. Here's my question to you, Mayor Jamie Ross. Under what law did you not allow me to speak when I verbally introduced myself at the beginning of my question to the council? Your action reminds me of the discriminatory conduct of John Reynolds in 2018 and again in 2021 by not allowing racialized Canadians to speak and raise their concerns and not record the meeting.
So I appreciate your comments. The gallery's heard. The gallery spent, and the gallery defined as community members who live here and are part of the community, spent 10 minutes. And in fairness, some people were working hard, communicating, others were looking to assist. But I simply do this. It was clear to me that it was not a technical issue. It was one of your willingness to comply. And I said that we need to move forward. You know, in fairness, I don't believe we should be waiting for 10 minutes. We should be assisting, and people in this gallery assisted their friends and neighbors to do it. I noticed pretty quickly when I held and said, I wanted you to do it, it went up pretty quickly. So that says to me that you wanted to do it. But in fairness, you offer some comments. I've heard them. You've heard my comments. You may not accept them, but it's probably good we go forward. Okay. So I'm going to move on to, I think I have Carolina Clark, and then Jim and Sherry, did you put up your hand again? Okay. Okay. Thank you then. Carolina?
Hi, so just to Jim's comment, I agree. I think it's time for us to start talking about water metering. But you know, once we get into that conversation, and I know that's probably for another day, I would like to know if there's a way to read our meters once a year, the way they are right now. I understand you have to lift a heavy lid and take a look at it. But I do think it's time for us to start talking about metering, especially going over budget from what we budgeted for in 2020 for the water. I don't know if, you know, I understand there is some, and Ken, please correct me if I'm wrong through the chair. There are some fees that went up from the District of North Vancouver side, or that was just, we used more than we do usually. And because of the pandemic, people at home, the water usage, you know, obviously, you know, that we use more water if there's more people at home. Or is it a bit of both for the water usage, going over budget there on the water usage?
And that was posed to Ken?
The question to go to Ken, was there any increase on the fees from the District of North Vancouver side?
Yes, through the chair.
Yes.
There were a number of factors that are causing an increase in water costs for the village. And they haven't been entirely isolated, but there have been increased in fee from the District of North Vancouver for the cost of the asset infrastructure for moving the water from North Van to the village. There has been an increase, I believe it was about 6% in the water rate that is charged for actual water usage, and that is established by Metro Vancouver. Those factors were more or less known, but the other factor that is causing an increase in water costs is water usage is up quite a bit. I'm just throwing what I remember out. It's in the range of about 30%. Now, whether that is related to the pandemic, I don't know at this point. The other factor, and this right now, there is a meter on the Valcara Park, Regional Park. And that regional park started onto the water system, I believe it was near the end of 2019. And so the meter has been read a few times, I believe, and there is water usage on that park, but it doesn't seem to be exponential at this point. And it can't be, the entire usage increase cannot be allocated to the park, should I say. So we are trying to get more of a handle on where the water usage is coming from, including, and Stuart could probably speak to this more, leak detection and things like that. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was concerned. That was going to be my next comment. Maybe there is a somewhere, and we should, yeah, keep that in mind. Thank you, Ken. Thanks, Mayor Ross.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. So, John Shulistani, is your hand still up, or did you not take it down from last time? Because I'm trying to decide whether I can go to Rob Begg or you're on the list. Can you let me know, please?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I am on the list, and I wanted to correct you. I did not say I had technical difficulties. I said I was not here at the beginning of the meeting. The second question was that under what law did you not allow me to speak when I verbally introduced myself at the beginning of the question of my question to the council, and you did not respond under what law you did not allow me to speak.
So if you want, I will convey to you what powers a mayor has, but mostly the power a mayor has is that when we invite people into our meetings and we look to have them cooperate, and we understand there are different challenges and barriers, but I just think that we need to be able to move ahead without a 10-minute going through where it seems that it isn't a technical barrier. It is in fact maybe one of willingness to commit to the same things that everybody else. And, you know, you had some of your community members speak up and say, here's a way we can do it. Like if you want to switch on that video, that's fine. So anyways, we will, through the chief administrative officer, there are some pieces about a mayor has. He or she has significant powers. I've exercised none of those tonight. I just asked you to come into the same place that everybody else is on this meeting. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I'm going to now move to Rob Beck.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind that I have a right under the Charter of Rights and Freedom. Hopefully you haven't violated it. Thank you. And if you have, I demand apology for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Rob Beck?
Yeah, the question I have, Your Worship, to anybody who'd like to speak to it, would be if our usage is up 30%, does that mean the amount of water that we are dumping through the line ends should be reduced because of that 30% increase in regards to the chlorine content and the reason for dumping? That number one. And number two, if there is going to be metering, will they be metering the amount of water that we're actually dumping so that there's a cost put and we all are aware of how much water we are allowing, if you will, to go down the drain? Thank you.
Appreciate your comment and appreciate your ending there too. So you asked for it to go through. So I'm going to, without anybody in particular, Rob, but I'm going to look to see if Chris can comment. Is he still on our call?
I am.
Thank you, Chris.
So in regards to, sorry, I'm not too sure what exactly the question is that you're asking me to answer here. In general about the water usage, is that the general?
Yeah, well, if we can, do you mind, just so we're sure? Let me.
In my personal opinion, I think you have a problem with leaks And I think that's what is attributing to the large amount of increase year after year, if I had to put a guess on it, to be perfectly frank. There are ways to review leakage. There are specialized companies who can do that, come out and review all the lines, and it sounds kind of untechnical, but it's to do with acoustics, and they actually listen for leaks along the line. So that's one way you can review the main lines. And then just out of personal experience as well, through your neighboring municipality in Hamel, you'd be surprised of how much water can be lost through a municipal service if it's broken. So in such a, best way to describe it, we had a resident have a water bill of over $10,000 on our last water meter reading because they had a crack in their irrigation line. And so it goes to tell you can lose a lot of water very quickly if the tap is left running all day, every day. So that's one thing. And in regards to the end lines being flushed, I mean, every municipality has to flush lines, and some do meter it, some don't. Sometimes people just say it's a cost of having a water system. So that's about all I can perhaps relay there. If there's any other more technical questions, I can perhaps answer them.
Okay. Do you mind if I just go back very briefly to Rob Begg? Did that get at the question you were asking? Is there another piece there?
No, sorry, thank you, Your Worship. No, I didn't take my hand down. But I did ask if they would be metering, if we had an idea of how much we are dropping out the end at this point in time. I know that question has come up previously as well. I would tend to agree with Chris that that's a huge increase in water, and I don't think it'd be attributed to any even if we had that many more people staying at home due to COVID and the park. So that might be something that council wants to take a look at, is actually having that service in and finding out.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for your questions. And Chris, I think that service is one where it makes some sense. So to at least consider. So I know Lorna's probably making a note on that for us. Okay. And and thank you, Lorna. I'm going to go to Ian Devlin with his hand up, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that a few months ago, the Water Committee identified the increase in water year over year. And this, we have absolutely no data that we can go to try to figure out where all this water increase has gone. Without the meters to the individual users, you don't have any data to support what's going on and see if there's breaks or whatever. But it's clear that I would support what Chris has said, is that this is probably some sort of a leak in the system or somewhere. And we got to find it. But I guess the main thing, but coming back to the importance of getting these meters up and running, if we had data, even if we're not billing for the water, we'd at least know what the flows are. And right now we have the flows coming in on our SCADA system from North Van. So we know what that is. We should be able to total up then what usage is being done in the village itself. And the difference, that's their leakage.
Right.
And without the data, it's very difficult to figure out whether we've got it. But anyway, I think this year over year increase should be a huge concern to council, especially with the price of water.
Yes. I think you're accurate in that for sure. Yes. So thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. I just want to check one thing. I've got Carolina, but I also for a while there had Stuart on a series. Would you like to speak? Were you up, or was that just the hand went up? Sorry, is that all right, Carolina Clark, Councillor Clark? Sorry, did you want to speak, Stuart?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in terms of flushing, there was a question on whether we've increased the amount of flushing. The amount of flushing that we've done throughout the last couple of years has remained consistent. If not, we've actually challenged it and reduced it somewhat. We were also investigating areas that we were concerned about for leaks all throughout the summertime. We did come up with one area that had a small leak in a valve, which we isolated and fixed. And there were also some issues identified with residents for excessive use too. But you guys are 100% right. I totally support the idea or the concept of meter reading. As a matter of fact, we are looking forward to doing a test run of exposing all the meter boxes, checking them out and taking a reading for all of them. That's what I plan on doing this summer. Whether or not we actually use the data, I was going to be checking out the meters, recording the data on that, and seeing how long it would take to do it manually. So we're thinking about that stuff constantly. And one last item, I'd just like to remind everybody that the water meter costs, or not the costs, but the volume went up substantially this summertime, but also dropped in September quite a bit. So that speaks more to use than to leaks.
Okay, Stuart, thank you. And I'm going to go over to Councillor Clark. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's time, and we've been warned by the Water Committee a few times now, like Ian said, for a few months about this water usage. And this is something that the Water Committee feels that really council should be looking at along with the metering. So I think for the sake of not putting this, keep on postponing this and maybe get to it in 2 years from now or who knows, is there a possibility to add this conversation to our strategic plan and maybe talk about a budget necessary to look for the leakage, if this is something council wants to pursue soon, or at least get started on that process? Do we want to, because I remember Chris saying at some point, like it could, and I can't remember if it was Chris or Stuart, but it could cost some money for us to even just try to find out where the leakage is coming from, right? But I do think it's time for us to have those conversations around the leaks that we believe that it's coming from our water system, as well as the metering of the water. I would rather do sooner than later. So I was wondering if council is willing to talk about this during the strategic plan. So
actually, Your Worship, I just put that item on my list for the strategic planning sessions.
There we go. Thank you so much, Lorna. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So and that's probably a good little, very short infomercial that type of piece going forward to the strategic plan. And then we're able to take a look, decide if that's one of our priorities and part of the scope and sequence for going forward in this unusual time where we've comprised as a new council. So Councillor Clark, thank you very much for doing that. And thank you to our CAO, Lorna Dysart, for being ahead. Even before we could get in, you'd put it over to that. So thank you. And we are specifically doing that in public because we want people to come on, and in the end, council has that responsibility to pick those priorities, the scope and sequence, but we're interested in people's thoughts, and we got a little bit of a flavor tonight on it, on that part. So thank you. Okay. I don't have anybody on the speakers list right now. So I'm going to say that we've got a motion that we could look for from our councillors to be moved and seconded.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Clark and seconded by Councillor Drake.
Okay.
Okay, so anybody to speak on that? We may have got to the point. So seeing no comments, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the ayes carry it. So thank you. Okay, so we're on to
5.3.
5.3. And it is the, so we're going to hear from Lorna, Chief Administrative Officer, and Ken on the report dated February 22nd regarding council indemnity increase.
Yeah, yes, Your Worship, I'll ask Ken to introduce this if he's still on the call.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Do we want to show the report again?
Yeah, I think we can. It might take not even a brief second. Look at that.
Yes, so council made a motion last year that council's indemnity increase for each calendar year be based on the 12-month period ending October 31st of each year. And the intent of that motion was that the CPI increase would then be able to go in effect with a bylaw that could be passed before the start of a calendar year. So due to the fact that there wasn't a full council, this was not brought forward right after October 31st of last year, and now it's being brought forward at this time. And so at this time, the Vancouver CPI has been 0.8% for the 12-month period ending October 31st, 2020. So there is a bylaw on the agenda that implements a 0.8% increase for council for the entire calendar year of 2021. And the increases are as shown for the mayor and council members there. And since bylaws cannot be retroactive, this bylaw is due to go into effect if council adopts it on April the 1st. And once it goes into effect, there'll be a catch-up amount paid so that the overall increase for the entire year of 2021 will work out to exactly the 0.8%. And so this is the process that we're following for the council member indemnity increases, and we welcome council's feedback.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Bruce Drake.
Yeah, thank you. My only point on this, and we've discussed it before, and I see it's in the motion that we, I think as a matter of course, unless something's absolutely urgent, that we ought not to be moving faster than 2 readings in a given meeting. So I'm happy to see this occur, and if it means it has some impact on what we when this comes into effect, I think we just live with it.
Okay. Thank you. So any other councillors to discuss? Do we want to move it on to the floor right now?
Looking for a mover?
Okay, and I found one in Councillor Clark, and I found a seconder out of my left eye, Councillor Drake. So it's on the table, and it, as said, it's being read a first and second time. So any discussion from the councillors first?
I'll
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment. So here's, it's to the salary of council and mayor. And just for the sake of the gallery, if you don't have the agenda in front of you, we're talking about $176.46 a year for the mayor per year. And we're talking about $88.23 for the councillor more a year. Last year I voted against an increase. This year I will be supporting. The amount's very small, so it equals to 0.8%.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Drake.
My apologies, I haven't taken down my hand.
Oh. Okay. Any other comments by anybody? I'll just, seeing no one on the speakers list, I will move in and just say that this is a pattern that started way back when, early in council, and the pattern was to do it in public, always do it with the public there, always with the public able to offer comment, and always that the public would know what the council did. And there are some models out there where people do it in closed in different sectors. And there's also some models where they allow different formulas to do it. And at the time, the council felt it was important that there's no easy way to do this, that it was done in public. And so I'm glad to see that it remains to this day. So we've got a motion on the floor. Do we have any questions, comments? All right, so we'll do one reading at a time, correct?
Two readings.
I'm happy to do two.
What's that?
I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm happy to do two. I just don't want to see it done in two meetings.
Okay. Okay, good. So we'll looking to our Chief Administrative Officer, we can move both readings at the same time?
Correct. And that's
Okay.
what the motion reads, Your Worship.
Yes, okay, thank you. So we have John Shula standing. Would you like to add comment, please?
Sure, thank you. May I know the reason for the increase? Thank you.
Any of the counselors?
It's a consumer price index.
Yeah, this.
And I'd like to also comment,
Oh, yes.
it's not actually $176 for the mayor, $88.23. That's an annual amount, and this is prorated from April to December. So there's 3 months out of there.
176 for the mayor and 88 and 23 for the councillor.
That's for 12-month period, but this is only actually going to be an increase on a 9-month period,
Oh, good point. Thank you.
which is $66 a year.
Thank you, Councillor Wilder. Good catch.
So what was the consumer price index multiplier?
It's based on the Vancouver Consumer Price Index.
And what is the number multiplier?
0.8%.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Oh, Deborah?
I think it's worth it. $88 is nothing. Neither is $126. You guys do a lot of work, who's ever on council. So I say go for it.
Thank you, Deborah. Ken, could I just go to you and confirm the statement of what the effect for the year is? Just so my understanding is clear.
If we could go back to the report. So the effect for the entire year is in effect 176 for the mayor and 88 for the council member. But the actual bylaw ensures that that entire increase is received for the entire year. In the bylaw, it accounts for the fact that it's being implemented partway through a year.
Okay.
So in other words, the increase has to go up to make sure that, for example, the mayor receives the entire 176 increase for the entire year. And up until April 1st, the mayor, for example, would have been paid at the old rate. So the entire rate for the year as quoted on the previous page, right?
Right.
Of $176 and $88.
Okay. Does that make sense to people, particularly on council? Yes? Does it? Okay. All right. So seeing no more speakers, I'll call all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. So we will move now, thank you, to item 5.4. And it is Lorna, our Chief Administrative Officer, will provide an overview of the report provided by Lisa Zorn, the Chief Election Officer.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm really pleased to provide the 2021 by-election final report. It is a very thorough report and outlines many of the undertakings that occurred, not just because it was a by-election, but because it was a by-election during the COVID pandemic. And we had frequent conversations with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and with other municipalities that were working on by-elections also. And between Mrs. Warren being our excellent Chief Election Officer and the work that was taken care of in the office by the two Deputy Chief Election Officers and myself, I think we managed to hold a fairly well-run by-election. And I would like to note that one of the changes that the ministry allowed in their ministerial order was that not just having mail ballots during the period for certain instances way, or if you weren't able to attend. So anyone was able to use a mail ballot process. And I have to give Paula credit with taking that on. And I think we ended up with something like 71 mail ballots, regardless of the number. It was quite a bit of work, but it worked out really well because of the thoroughness in how it was managed. And so I guess if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Not seeing any hands, any questions? Anything from the council? Anything from the gallery? So it looks like your report was a good one, Lorna, and there are no questions. That's always a good sign. Okay, so we would look for a motion.
Move to receive.
So Drake, Councillor Drake and Councillor Wilder seconding. So the motion's on the floor. Any discussion? Okay, so we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it looks like, I think Carolina, Councillor Clark, are you?
Yeah, I'm just having some issues here with my video. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. I was just wanted to ascertain if you had voted in the affirmative on that. Or...
Affirmative, sorry. I'm
That's
having
okay.
breaking
Okay.
out here with the internet.
Okay, thank you. So no votes in the negative, so the affirmative carries. So we are on to item 5.5. Again, Lorna, and a report regarding the Puni Group Memorandum Year in Review 2020 to 21.
Yes, Your Worship, as you can see, the Puni Group did a significant amount of work for the village. It was challenging because of the volume of work that was requested, but we were able to meet the requests of council and have this work completed. And Richard White is on the call if you would like him to go through the report in detail.
Sure, that would be helpful. Richard, if you could.
Sure. So folks will have access to this as 5.5 on the agenda tonight. We were asked at the beginning of the year to do a number of things, and a number of things came up during the course of the year. It's a very different year from my perspective, 35, 40 years in the business. But, you know, things changed so dramatically during the course of the year, from in-person meetings to, you know, carrying on as best we could. And here we go again tonight, another example. But we managed to deal with
chicken keeping and pre-application fees, special events policies, road ends, which didn't proceed. It was probably the biggest item we took on this year, this past year in 2020, but it was something that council reconsidered and decided not to move forward with. And there's a variety of other things. Another important thing I think that happened was the port's allowance for individual docks or even group wharves, I guess. And that's a topic that's still under consideration. Another one that's still under consideration, which will be coming up soon for council, is a short-term rental policy. So all in all, I think a lot of good work was done of a regulatory nature, not much in terms of new development proposals and so on, which in many planning departments is really the main feature of their work. But we've done a lot, I think, over the past year at council's direction and with the community's input to prepare for the future. Another thing that happened near the end of the year was the decision, by the way, the wharf project was subsidized by the port of Vancouver, Vancouver Port Fraser Authority. And we also received recently a grant from the province through UBCM, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, to do a housing needs assessment, which each municipality in the province and regional district unincorporated areas are all required to do. So that's going to be something coming up, started in 2020, but it's carrying on into 2021. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect. So we'll look at, so I have one speaker right now. We'll go to Rob Beck. Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Richard. Would it be possible that we put a dollar figure to each one of these projects? I think it would be most interesting, as some bylaws and consulting take a lot more time and effort than others, and possibly we wouldn't see a return, if you will, or a vast number of villagers actually partaking in that type of a bylaw. So I don't know whether that's possible or not, but I think in the flavor of transparency, it would be excellent to see. And moving forward, I don't know how council feels, but I would make that suggestion. Thank you.
So Will, if I can, Rob, I'll refer that question to our Chief Administrative Officer for an answer on that. In terms of.
Yes, Your Worship, as we are invoiced on various projects, they are broken down in the system, so we would be able to do that.
Yeah, and so that's our plan going forward to do that.
Your Worship, just by the way, the consultant's time is always itemized because we have to submit a regular report.
Right.
But any number of other costs that are absorbed by the municipality staff time, council just gave themselves I think an $8 a month raise, but each one of those costs are not normally carried forward. And I think this council, like many, is dealing with a much more complicated process as a result of the recent facts of life, and that's something that I think your community has to be cognizant of. Is that there's a lot more strain on the decision-making process right now.
Okay, thank you, Richard. We'll go to Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm having some troubles here. So to the chair, to Richard through the chair. Richard, on item number 11, it says non-council related items on Fair Cove Committee. On the bullet points, it says the first strategic discussions, and on the second, it says mapping of potential land swap options between Belcarre and Port Moody. I don't have any recollections about this, so.
Your Worship, it got it basically died on the vine. It's something that we took a look at,
was one of the things that happens in Belcarra is you have Belcarra proper and Belcarra North, and separating the two is Port Moody. And really, there's not much in that part of Port Moody other than trees and rocks and a road that's not gazetted. So we took a quick look at the possibility of that, and as I say, Your Worship, it died on the vine. So it was kind of an out there idea, but it was a thought that was worth looking into, and your village manager allowed us to take a little look at that.
Okay.
But Your Worship, if you're keen on it, I'd be keen to look at it some more, but it's probably not going to work out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Carolina?
Yeah, and another comment that I would make, and just for the sake of more clarity to council when we decide to put things on the table. This chicken bylaw first came to light. It was one resident asking for the chicken bylaw, and next thing I know, it's on the agenda, and I you know, and maybe that was me, but I would ask in the future, if we come with something like this on the table, listen, we're gonna do this chicken bylaw. I didn't realize that we would have to hire consultants outside of our staff to get that done. And I'm sure there's many reasons why we had to do it, you know, OCP amendments and all. We even had a public hearing on that. But I think in the future, I would like to have that clear. There is some projects, obviously, that we look at the agenda and we realize as counselors, oh yeah, we're gonna need consultants. But this was not one of them for myself. I guess if had I known that, I would have probably, you know, I'm very supportive of the chicken by law, but I would have probably said, well, let that person have the chicken and leave them alone instead of creating a whole policy for it. Because it was quite a bit of work on that one thing. And I don't think, I'm speaking for myself here, but I think some of us too, when I spoke to some of the counselors, didn't realize that we were gonna need that amount of work behind the scenes for that to come forward. So yeah, so just, you know, for the sake of clarity in future discussions, if something like that comes, then I would appreciate knowing from either the CAO or the mayor, oh, we're gonna need consultants to get this one done. Thank you.
So, John Schulestani, why don't you go ahead and then I'll add myself to the list.
Thank you. My question regarding item number 1 of the report is regarding the amendment to building and plumbing bylaw. It says that the Village of Belcarra Building and Plumbing Code Regulation bylaw number 355/2003 amendment bylaw number 543/2020 was adopted. And the item was regarding the amendment to building and plumbing code bylaw to eliminate the requirement of a property undergoing a major renovation to connect to the village's water system. My understanding from Mr. Bruce Drake's comments during the previous public meeting was that it was required that all properties to connect to the municipal water system. And in fact, some of the residences, as you well know, you force them to connect them to the water system. How come that this item no longer required?
Your Worship, I could answer that question. The difference between what Mr. Schulestani is referring to, bylaw, that when there's a change of ownership, the new owners, if they're not on the water system, they are still required to connect within 9 months.
Okay.
The amendment was just for major renovations.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that information. John,
I'm sorry, but that wasn't the answer to my question. My question is, how come this was previously required and now this item is no longer required? So what changed in the water system, if Mr. Bruce Drake, Councillor Bruce Drake could comment on it? How come previously it was required and now is no longer required?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Jamie.
Sure, we'll go through you. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been around this several times, but anyone who hasn't heard the entire story, when the water system was originally proposed, there was no specified requirement to connect, provided you met a certain series of conditions. And one of the example of that was that you had quality water on your own property, you had a well, and you did not want to connect. Subsequently, council adopted two requirements. And they were one, that when a home changed hands, such as Lorna describes, the new owner would have to connect. And I guess Lorna's specifying that as 9 months. But in addition, a major home renovation would also trigger the requirement to connect. And that was a decision made by council. This change was made by council, and council has that sort of discretion. Specifically, I believe it was Carolina raised it. She didn't like the fact. She explained why she didn't like that particular provision, and council accepted it. So the requirements changed.
Thank you. So there is no data requirements or engineering requirement, just like or not like the council.
I'm not sure I understand your statement. If council makes a decision, it makes it after some discussion. And if that's council's decision, then that's why you have a council.
I mean, my question is that, so it's based on councils favoring something. It's not based on engineering data or a valid justification for removing this condition. Just because someone from the council didn't like it, you just remove it. And for others, you actually force them to comply.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Council discussed it. Council decided it made sense to do away with it. Council did away with it. As to whether you like the rationale council used, well, that's a decision that council makes after due consideration of what the impacts will be and what it considers reasonable.
And the reason I requested that the question be to Councillor Direct was that your discussion was regarding the water quality, and that was the requirement that made this possible. I didn't know that was council's liking or not liking that required people to connect or not.
That sounds to me like a separate question, but no, I mean, in the end, it's council's responsibility to get the facts, weigh what it believes to be in the best interest of the community in the long run and what it considers reasonable, and make a decision.
Thanks for confirming that the water quality is not an issue for a resident to connect or not connect.
I didn't say that.
So I'm going to try and just test here if we've had a pretty sufficient answer. It may not be deemed satisfactory, but I think Councillor Drake has provided a lot of information. Councillor Clark added a perspective by a nod of her head and an agreement. So I'm going to look to move on. John, that makes sense to you?
Yeah, the only question I was going to raise is what we're looking at doing now is accepting the report from the Pooney Group. We're not here to debate the merits of the water at this point in time. We're being asked to just accept a report. So let's accept it and move on. And if there's any issues in that report we want to bring up at a strategic session, let's do it then. Thank you.
Yep, fair enough. So I have Councillor Wilder and Councillor Clark, and then I'm going to add my name to the list if I can.
Thank you. I accept the report the way it is with one minor typographical correction on item 8 under wharfs. It's Sinclair, not Sinclair Avenue or road.
Pardon me, Your Worship and Council.
Thank you. That was it. But great report. Thank you, Mr. Waite.
It's actually in West Vancouver, isn't it? Right? Sinclair. So, okay. Thank you, Councillor Wilder. And moving on to Councillor Clark.
I just want to make, thank you, Bruce, he covered all the points on the water subject. And I just want to say thank you once again for this report. It's very good for transparency, not just to council and sort of review in our heads what was done in the previous year, but also transparency for the residents. And just a point that you know, I could go with or without the numbers attached to each of those projects. The reason to that is because at the end of each year, we do audit, right, everything that was spent, and the consultant's fee will be added to that as well, which will reflect the total amount on all of these. So just as a point, to me, I can do with, like I said, with the numbers beside each item or with, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I added my name to the list, and then I'll go to Rob Beck. So I just wanted to make the general comment as we move forward. It's not often you're part of a council and the work that's been done, you bear no responsibility, but I'm clear going forward I will, and I look forward to doing that and trying to do my best job as well as with councillors John Snell, who's new. But I would say this, I want to share with our new council, and Councillor Clark, I thought you made an excellent point. We exist with consultants because we don't pay staff. We can't have, to have the number of staff that are in other municipalities, we're just not able to do that. It's not a proposition we can move forward on. But I certainly don't have a problem about when we're looking at things to talk about whether we need a consultant, myself, and you identified myself and our chief administrative officer. And I agree with that. I would also encourage all councillors to be able to be willing and know that we're expecting you to be part of that debate where we can see as a council, we can move forward without a consultant and where we can. And I, not to take away from the responsibility of the CAO and myself, but I think that's a joint piece where we would look and say, the balance, we're doing this, and would we need need a consultant? And I just want to make sure all council feels comfortable engaging in that discussion. But good point, and I will be on alert for that going forward. And I'll move
And I just
quickly.
think it was my bad. I should have asked too. I just didn't realize sometimes we have staff writing the bylaws, sometimes we have consultants. And I can understand being here for a couple of years now, why there is this difference.
Yeah.
It seems to me that when there's OCP amendments and building code by law, we do get it. So I will learn more with time, but just. Thank you.
Yep, no, and thank you. And I'm going to go without delay to Rob Beck. Thank you.
Yeah, Your Worship. This was brought up not to look at the consultants and what we've spent on a yearly basis. This was on a project basis. I think it's important as villagers that we understand. The more we understand, the easier it is to stomach, so to speak, to coin a phrase. So I believe that the transparency by project allows us to take a look, and as well for council to look at what projects cost on a project by project basis. Sorry, but I come from the business sector, and that's how we run our budgets. That's how we run our businesses. And I think that the more people know, the more council knows. To Councillor Clark's point, if she'd known, probably the amount of money wouldn't have been spent on a chicken bylaw. To this day, I don't know. Do we have anybody that actually raises chickens?
Yes, we do, Your Worship.
So I would imagine you could count the number of chicken raisers on one hand. If we take a look at the cost, to my point, I think I would agree with Councillor Clark that basically we could have just said, here's what you have to adhere to, raise your chickens. Anyway, that was my point, certainly not to look at what we're spending on, but rather projects.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. And I'm just looking at David Shulistani, please, and then we'll go to John Shulistani, I think.
Yeah, I have a quick question in regards to the amendment to the building and plumbing bylaw. Was there any consulting fees made on that research regarding the amendment to the building bylaw amendment?
So we'll go to our CAO, but I mean, part of what we've undertaken is, and I think Rob's done a good job, the projects are out there, and we've undertaken going forward as our year-end process, as we do every year, to declare those costs. So I don't know if they're known right now. They're in the gathering stage, but I'll go over to our Chief Administrative Officer. She may have a different perspective, and it wouldn't be the first time I'm off. So.
No, Your Worship, I wouldn't be able to do that right now.
Okay.
But
the reason why
was-
I raised that question is because if there was consulting fee done on that research, then there should be a, like a educated response as to why that amendment was dropped. I would just want to know that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, David. And John, we'll go to you now, please.
Thank you. My question now regarding item number 8, the Wharfs and Highway Encroachment Agreement. Council amended the OCP to align with the new wharf approval regulation from VFPA. As per Councillor Lisa Wilder's advice, we have reached Port Vancouver regarding the Sketch Plan 2020 showing dock allocations. The port has advised our family that Belcarra municipality has removed the allocated dock location fronting our property in the Plan 2020, which was previously designated and shown in Plan 1999. When will Belcarra municipality correct the Plan 2020 by reinstating the removed dock allocation fronting our property? Thank you.
So we'll go to the Chief Administrative Officer and we'll review why this is on the agenda right now. As other speakers have pointed out, it's to be able to look at the projects. It's not to go through them. They're not on the agenda for discussion, but could you confirm that for us, Lorna?
Yes, Your Worship. This, the report on this and the wharf program was on the October 13th, 2020 agenda, and Mayor Blinken resigned that day, and the report was not brought back as it was felt that it was discussion and required a full council. So it is on the strategic planning workshop that we have planned for council to decide if it is a high priority to bring it back in the near future.
Okay, good. All right. And going on to Rob, do you have your hand up to speak?
I'm sorry, I can't get used to this new
That's
system.
okay. Done over at reactions. Thank you. Okay.
Hasn't been moved yet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we've exhausted speakers, so I'll look for this to be moved. Counselor Clark moving, Counselor Wilder seconding.
Thank you.
So any discussion on this from? No, not seeing any discussion. I'll call the question. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed. The affirmative carries. So we are moving on to item
0.2.
5.6. 5.6.
Yep. So Lorna, you have a verbal report regarding the short-term rental accommodation?
Yes, Your Worship. Council members expressed interest in having this item brought back. The short-term rental accommodation and bed and breakfast policy update was deferred at a council meeting on March 8th, 2020, that should say. And the request is from the current council to bring this report back to the table. So this is a motion to lift the report from the table.
Right. And the day of lifting would have been, just so I'm sure, would have been, it was at the council meeting of March 9th, 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
March 8th.
Was it March 8th?
March 9th, sorry.
Oh, so March 9, 2020.
March 9th,
Yeah.
2020.
And then the piece is brought forward to the regular council meeting on March 8th, 2021. Correct? Is that, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
So
Okay,
this is a motion to lift it from the table.
Yes.
And the report will be brought back to council.
okay,
So moved.
okay. And seconded?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second that.
okay. Who did I, just sort of clarification, the first mover was
Bruce?
Bruce?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And then John Snell, if that's all right, that's the I caught. So it's
Yeah.
on the floor. Any counselors like to lead off on this?
Well, it's just to lift from the table, so I don't think
Yeah.
tonight is the time
Yeah.
for discussion on the item. So yeah, so I'm happy to vote on.
Okay, and before we do, I just wanted for clarity, if I could ask the Chief Administrative Officer to, if my memory is correct, what is the piece on this in terms of what the status for would occur, in terms of consultation, in terms of hearing?
Your worship, this short-term rental accommodation is a policy. And so it would be brought back to council for discussion.
Right.
And sorry, I'm just trying to recall.
That's okay. Take your time.
Your worship? if
Yes.
I may, to this is
Richard?
something else that the consultants worked on a little bit.
Yeah, do you mind if Lorna, do you mind if I go to Richard on this?
Sure, you go ahead.
Okay,
So
thank you,
what-
Richard.
So it's been off of council's agenda for some time, but now it's lingering. And so we want to bring it back for council to resolve what you feel is the right thing to do on behalf of the village. And that process will get started again
Yes.
if you allow it to happen. But
Yes.
we're not really well prepared to talk about it tonight.
Okay,
And sorry, your worship, I will say that when there is a zoning bylaw amendment, there is a public hearing. And so the zoning bylaw amendment comes back with the report. There would be a public hearing for that portion of the report.
okay. Thank you, Lorna, and thank you, Richard, for that. And so we'll look to, okay, so I have John. This has been lifted, but why don't you pose your question and see, and we'll see. Yes, go ahead, John.
Sure, thank you. Very briefly, I wonder if any member of the council has conflict of interest with respect to short-term rental and Airbnb.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is that that comment right now, we're just lifting it and it's being brought to the regular council meeting on March 8th, 2021. So at that point, that question would be very much in order, but council is just lifting this off the table. Okay? So basically, the short is hold that question till the 8th, okay? Please.
Thank you. Yes, it's
Okay,
very
thank you.
important before councils vote on such an important item when they have a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to go to calling the question right now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so no opposed, the affirmative's carried. So it's carried, okay? So reports from mayor and council committee representatives. So I think we
Point two.
yeah.
Item
so-
6.1 was withdrawn. Your
Yeah, I
worship.
was just going to say, so we're now on item 6.2. And I have a couple items on that. I wanted to bring, we had a request, all the mayors in the Tri-Cities, and Anmore and Belcarra to attend, share their virtual Imagine Gala 2021. And this was put on the table because at the point I have agreed to go join the other mayors. But in fact, we understood at the time there was a cost. Cher has indicated to us there is not a cost, so we can move this on the table, but I thought it was appropriate since it was going to be expense, it should be on. So the good news is that amount of 85 will not go forward, but I did want to take the chance to highlight the important work done by Cher and the work they're doing in particular during the pandemic, where we know that we have families and we know that there were volunteers that did great work here in Belcarra to assist people to get things. But we know that in the wider area that Cher serves, there are a number of families for getting food on the table is not something that happens. It's something they go to pick up. So all the mayors are going to it. It's a piece that I committed to, that I want to be part of that mayor work. And in particular on this one, I think it's a very important thing. I would encourage people to take a look. We all have different charities and things, but take a look. And if this captures your imagination, please feel free to make a donation. I also want to, at this point, and I recognize I have 2 items, but I wanted to, at this point, recognize, as I did last council meeting, some people that make a difference in our village. So I would like to recognize John Reynolds for his service as a moderator in our most recent election, all candidates meeting run by CRAB. And I would also like to, at the same time, recognize Jim Chisholm for his work in past years that he does that. It is an important function for people to step forward. So I want to acknowledge both those people, John for his most recent work and Jim for his work before. And then the next one is a shared one with our Chief Administrative Officer. We were asked to go to a meeting on Friday, and the Fraser Health is asked for our assistance in letting people know that in the next while, there are going to be clinics set up, and they are looking, as they are with a number of other elected officials, to identify people that are 80 and over and Indigenous elders. But in particularly, they want the municipalities to help identify people that are 80 and older that may, so they know that they can go to a clinic and get the vaccine. And in addition, to know that there are mobile clinics for some, and also above that, that they're willing for some individuals to go into their home. So this is a shared responsibility with the Chief Administrative Officer, and we will, we're just gathering the information right now from Fraser Health. There will be, it's part of the provincial approach, but we wanted to make sure that we are helping to identify people in our village that are 80 and over. This is critical, and we want to make sure that happens. So Lorna Dysart and myself will come out with a shared message. And in addition, they've asked for people that are retired and are able to do a number of functions that are voluntary, if you have an interest in that. So we will convey that information, but we also want to acknowledge the importance for people to be able to get those vaccines. So I'd be pleased to take any questions on that full report that anybody has. So I'll open it up if there are any questions. Councillor Drake.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. Just one suggestion, maybe some of that information, as it's public information, we might want to put an email out from the municipality. Yes. With respect to those of a particular age who might be vulnerable. And I also suspect if people need assistance getting to a site, we could make that available if by no other means, certainly through CRAB. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. So as Lorna and myself go through to put something out to the community, we'll keep that in mind. Great suggestion. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, just the same to Bruce. I think an email is a great idea. And also I'd like to thank Mayor Ross for participating, for willing to participate on the Shares Virtual Imagine Gala. It's, I should point it out that unfortunately this is gonna be online, right? Like through Zoom this year because of the pandemic. But I think this is something, those kind of functions, I think, you know, besides getting out there and supporting a very important organization, I think this is great to have Belcarra, someone from Belcarra representing that. But also, I'd like to point it out that this is also a great opportunity too for elected officials to mingle and make some contacts.
Yeah.
So good for you for going. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Those were good ideas, good suggestions. So I'm not seeing anybody on the speakers list. So we will And there's not an action item there anymore, so we'll move on from 6.2 and we'll go to 7.1.
Yes, your worship, item 7.1 is for the adoption of the amendment to the fees and charges bylaw that removes the cost for the sprinkler heads and for the building permit application fee as it relates to sprinklers.
Okay, so let's move it if we can to get it on the table. So Councilor
move it.
Drake moving, I've got a seconder in Councilor Clark. And it's on the table, discussion. Bruce, you want to lead off, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm pleased to see this move ahead, although it's not everything I was hoping ultimately to get. It's a step in the right direction. As I've mentioned previously, I think as a municipality, having sprinklered homes is a huge plus, particularly given the risks, the unique risks we face and the challenges we've got in terms of firefighting water supply. We had discussed this previously, and this is a good example of a proposal going through full cycle, because we seem to have been talking about this for some time. It is here now for adoption. I had been, the concern I had is that we were still charging a connection fee if someone wasn't actually going to use water, if they only wanted to be connected to our system for the sake of firefighting. And as I've said before, that's a vanishingly small number. Hopefully not zero, but it would be a very small number. And in our last meeting, just to remind people, it was suggested one that, well, we can't allow that in any event because there are some Health Act restrictions. The concern being, understandably, that if you have both domestic water and a private supply into a single home, there's always a risk of cross-contamination, that the two will get linked and you'll get cross-contamination. And in addition, that we don't know whether a party is actually using water once they connect for a sprinkler. It's a very simple thing, of course, to connect the home. And so I just want to raise 2 points. Don't have to resolve them tonight, but I want to leave them because I will come back to them. One is, once we do begin to meter water, obviously then we are in a position to assess whether someone is actually using water, save in the case of fires. And secondly, I would like to know, and I'm sure someone can track it down, I'd like to see the health code provision specifically. Chris indicated he would, he knew of it, he was quite confident about it, but he didn't have his hands on the actual legislation. So I'd like to ultimately get that as well, if it precludes us from taking this last step. And the other point that I will come back to that Chris raised is that he suggested, maybe if you really feel this strongly about it, or council wants to encourage this, you might just do some sort of rebate independent of the process. So you pay that fee for connection, but you might want to consider doing some sort of rebate. Haven't thought about that in any detail yet, but I may come back to it. Those are my comments. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drake. And going over to Jim or Sherry Chisholm, please.
Jim here. Can you hear me?
Jim?
Yeah. With regards to the cross contamination, it can't be any cross connection if you don't have a connection.
If you connect for sprinklers.
If you're only connected to sprinklers, it can't be connected to anything else.
Yes, if I might comment, yes, Jim, you're correct. But this is a point we've been kicking around for years. And you can recall even Larry Scott in his time having anxiety about that. And it may be that it's restricted. I don't know. I need to see the health.
Well, I mean, we've had lots of time to think about that.
Well, we still do. But the fact is, if it's restricted in the Health Act, then it's a no-go. You simply can't do it.
Well, then somebody should just well, look it up then.
We'll get that information.
Yeah, we've had 6 months to do that.
Yeah.
Don't be cheeky.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Carolina, I have you next, please.
Thank you. So in this case, should we wait to adopt for us to get?
No, because this is a subset of what I was hoping to get, and I'm very happy to have these done.
Okay.
These are relatively minor savings, but they're really, but every step I think is important as a gesture to encouraging people to put in sprinklers.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Okay, so seeing no hands.
You didn't even have the goddamn courtesy to phone up and say you didn't want it.
Jim and Sherry, you're not muted, so we're hearing all of your comments.
Okay, so that happens to the best of us. So we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the question, the affirmative carries. Thank you. So we have correspondence and proclamations. Items 8.1 to 8.9 be received.
So moved.
Motion from Carolina Clark and a seconder from
Second.
Councillor Wilder. Thank you. So it's on the table. So we'll move receipt and go ahead. Any discussion?
Yeah.
John?
Yes, I am looking at 8.4, which was from Colleen McDonald regarding the Belcarra Community Path.
Yes.
The report, I believe, is quite extensive and shows some good opportunities for creating footpaths and trails and so on and so forth. And I believe that point should be emphasized and should be a point that we bring up at the any sort of strategic planning, because it is an important part of the village network. Thank you.
Right. So you'd be in agreement with the recommendation at the bottom there?
Yes, I would, but I think the villagers would appreciate being able to see, although the report is at the village hall, it might be, I think it could be valuable to a lot of folk to actually see it, if there was a way of bringing that forward slightly.
Oh,
if there was to be an agenda for the strategic, and this is obviously going to be one of the subject matters, then people can be looking at any ideas there
that are contained in that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So to the Chief Administrative Officer, how do we accomplish that?
Well, your worship, right now, we just have the motion on the floor to receive all correspondence, and we could deal with that when we get to it.
Okay.
If you're
Okay,
okay
so
with that.
John Snell, you're down. Rob Begg, please.
Oh, no, I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, just if this is the appropriate time to comment, I think that any path along Bedwell Bay is going to be of an astronomical charge, and it is totally unsafe to pedestrian traffic at any point, many points from a safety issue. Seeing how we have all our trails that lead down to Marine Avenue, wouldn't it be more appropriate at the same time to look at putting an actual walking path along Marine Avenue? That seems to be where all the paths are directed. There is already a path at the end of it through the village that gets you right to Belcarra Park. And cost-wise, if something was going to be looked at, it would be a fraction of the cost for trying to put a safe path along Bedwell Bay Road. That's just my comment.
Yeah, those are good
I
comments.
also would like, at the same point before, seeing how we're talking about paths, I'd like to see a commitment by council that in actual fact, no monies would be spent on paths until the roads are addressed in Belcarra. Many residents have talked about that. And I think that would be a place to start, would be addressing the roads. Thank you.
No, and appreciate your thoughts. And I mean, that's part of a new council going forward, deciding to figure out where its priorities and the scope and sequence are. So they're going to be public meetings and people will be able to offer their comments, and you offer, a comment that makes some sense about the area down below. And I think you may in return hear some comments about why there's a look at Bedwell Bay Road, which a safe path is not a new thing. Actually, safety was an ongoing look, I believe, prior to the last election. So anyways, but we'll look forward to having people. Council has made the decision to do that strategic planning in public. So, okay, so Rob, thank you for that. And I'm going to go to this. I've got Carolina Clark, I've got Deborah Struck, and then I have David Chula standing.
May I?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I agree. I think it's part, this is a motion to send this to strategic plan for discussion with the new council. So then, so there will be time for feedback on this. With that thought, I would like to call the question, please. Those are all the items.
That's just to receive the items, your worship.
Okay, so we'll call the question to receive, and then we'll go to the speakers that are remaining on. That's your intent, Councillor Clark?
Correct.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and none opposed, so the affirmative carries, the motion carries in the affirmative. So I believe we had Deborah Struck and then David Chula standing, so we'll.
So your worship, just to be clear, are we
Yes.
discussing 8.4 or are we starting with 8.1?
So I had these two folks on before, so
Okay.
I don't mind steering them to look at 8.1. But maybe we can do with, let's go with these two speakers and then let's go to 8.1 and work through. Does that make sense to council?
Yeah.
Yes? You good?
Mhm.
Okay, might be getting late. Okay, so Deborah.
Okay, I'll try and be quick. It's good that it'll go forward to strategic planning for pathways, because I remember, Jamie, that was one of your things that you were looking after, which doing trails and whatnot when you were on council previously.
Yep.
And then somehow some things got done as pathways, and I think that you didn't even end up knowing about it. It was a surprise to you. So I would hate that to happen to this council as well, moving forward. I'm thinking in particular of the pathways that were put in on Tatlow and Watson, which went down both sides of a residence, which my understanding is that resident was never even informed. So I would think that with the strategic planning and the community involved, I would hope that wherever pathways are done, that whichever residents are affected are pulled into the process, not expected to on their own to be known. So that's what I would just recommend council and staff in doing, and notifying residents where a pathway will be beside them or in front of them or behind them. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. David?
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the basketball and the tennis courts that are in the hike trail that are no longer serviced. What is the story behind that? Is that part of the pathway?
Which pathway are you referring to? Sorry.
And it's pretty much like right after, I guess, Young Street.
He's talking about the old tennis court.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Your
was just
worship, I
wanting more
will
information
advise,
about that. Yeah.
I will advise that item is on the strategic planning.
Okay, thank you. So David, did you hear that?
So they will be discussing it in the future?
On the strategic plan, in the strategic planning session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so we said we'd work through, see if anybody on council had any of these items that they wanted to take action on, correct? Carolina?
Are we voting? So I think the best way to do this is going one item by one item, like, right, on the action items.
Yeah, so the first one is we've exhausted the speakers, so we're on 8.1.
So we called the question and we voted on that one. So correct, Lorna, or?
No, your worship, we voted on receiving all the correspondence. Now we haven't dealt with the motion for 8.1.
Yeah,
Thank you. Sorry, my bad.
that's okay. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So
Okay.
can you call the question for that?
Yeah, for 8.1, we can, if we get a mover and a seconder for that, if you want to take action on it.
I'll move.
Yeah, move, second,
Second.
okay. So that there, any discussion on that? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, affirmative carries, so it's forwarded to the budget discussions for consideration. So item 8.2.
So moved.
Same.
Okay, so I've got Counselor Clark and Counselor Snell, motions on the floor. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And that's again forwarded to 2021 budget discussions and item 8.3. Counselors?
So
Move the
moved.
recommendation.
Okay. Okay, so it's on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries, it goes to the budget. Okay. The item 8.4,
Moved.
okay, seconded. Counselor Snell,
Yeah.
so it's on the floor. Any speakers? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and it goes to the strategic planning. Item 8.5, regarding Heritage Woods Secondary School commencement.
So moved.
Okay, Carolina Clark, second. John,
Second.
Bruce Drake, second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Affirmative carries, it goes to the budget for consideration. And then these information items are there, so we'll just, unless someone wants to bring them off the table, we'll leave, correct?
I'll, may I
Yes.
point something out here?
Yes,
If I may, thank you. Okay, so under item 8.11, so this is the Metro Vancouver appointments for the committees. I just wanted to make a comment on this. So the appointments were done back when I was the director, right? So prior to the by-elections. So we came, so I was appointed to some of the committees. I'm sorry, I'm not finding this on the agenda, sorry. Got it. So just for the clarity here, for the gallery, I was appointed to the COVID Response and Recovery Task Force Committee, the Electoral Area Committee, which Bill Cara has been part since 2018 for the past election here. Regional Parks, so we got our seat also on the Regional Parks for 2021, as well as on the Water Committee for the region. I just want to make a point here that during the last COVID-19 committee meeting, which was last week, the work of that committee was transferred to the Mayor's Committee on Metro Vancouver. So that committee right now will not go forward anymore. So all the work to that one committee is transferred to the Mayor's Committee. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. So right now I'm sitting on the Electoral Area Committee, the Regional Parks Committee, and the Water Committee. Okay, and Mayor Ross is the director, so he would most likely be at the Mayor's Committee. So I just wanted to point that out, that all that work from that committee, from the COVID committee, it's being transferred to the Mayor's Committee now.
okay, thank you very much, Counselor Clark, appreciate that. And I've got John Snell, and then I think Deborah Struck.
Yeah, thank you. I would draw your attention to 8.9 from the Port of Vancouver. It seems to me they've thrown their hands up in the air in having any sort of ability to control the speed in the Indian Arm. And the point I would make is that is nothing new. A lot of municipalities that are surrounded by water, lakes, and so on and so forth have the same problem with speed. And they found that they were able to control speed, not by controlling speed, but by enforcing noise bylaws. Most of the boats that are making excessive speed also make excessive noise. and it's easier to control the noise factor than it is the speed. Now, there are municipalities on the island, for instance, that had the same issue, had no success at all in controlling speed. As soon as they started to enforce noise bylaws, it became a lot simpler. And what would happen is that the authorities would just park themselves by the launching ramps, and any boat that came in that had a silent choice exhaust got a ticket. And that really took care of things fairly quickly. And it would also perhaps quieten things down in closer to home here in the bay. There are a lot of small vessels that just buzz around, they're fast and they're quite noisy. And again, the bylaw, a noise bylaw could perhaps take care of that. Our own noise bylaw is some 40 years old, and if the fine was lifted from $500 as it is now up to something like $1,500, then it might be something more of a deterrent. So that's all I would say on the subject. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate your comments. And then Carolina?
Yeah, I would just like to point out, I think, to the chair, to Councillor Drake. Councillor Drake, I think that was from your motion. This was from your motion from a few months ago. Is that correct? That's
I'm sorry, Carolina, the request for a buoy?
Yeah.
Well, certainly we had discussed it, and I was certainly very interested in seeing it done. I frankly consider their letter to be a waste of time. It's just pure buffle. But the reality is, I think most of us who do operate boats, even if we know very little else, we do pay attention to buoys that give us speed limits, because we're conscious that you really can't argue you weren't aware. I mean, they say themselves that people aren't aware of speed limits, and we have had cases here in the Arm, in fact, right out in front of our home, where RCMP have periodically set up and started warning boats that were passing through. So I'm not sure. I mean, they're correct in saying that public education is critical, but I think a buoy is part of public education, and I'm a little irked at their response.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks.
Okay. And I had someone that is declined, so we've got any other items there that people want to comment on, or just we're good? Good. Okay, so we have
To move the motion?
sorry.
We have to move the items to be received?
Yep.
That was done, Your Worship.
Yeah, I think I was just looking, I think we've received all the items by that motion. I was just confirming. So
Oh,
we're
correct.
good. So we are moving right now to what's on our thing is public question period. So any questions from the public? Okay, so it would be
Hold on,
appropriate.
Jamie.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Good
Got it.
job on the hand.
Thank you. I actually used it properly this time.
Great.
Just a couple of items that I have.
Yep.
Unfortunately, when you pulled 6.1, I had about 45 questions that I was going to ask, but a couple of things come to mind. I'm happy that that was done. This is the second time, however, that it's been done, and I find the motion neither fair nor logical. There's a number of reasons for that, but I would believe that consultation, as you've said yourself, you're committed to, with those involved, would have involved the people that are directly concerned with this motion, of which nobody has contacted the people that are directly concerned with the change in designation in area, i.e. docks. So I would like to actually, before that, I would like to suggest that it may be worthwhile for council to take a look at two of the proposed areas are in a previously designated group dock area. And those could go ahead immediately with no change in prior dock designation. Everybody seems to be concerned with so many people that want to get on the water. That would put probably a maximum of 12 people on the water immediately with no changes to anything. I'd like council to consider that going forward before they table and stop all dock, et cetera, applications for Bedwell Bay. I would then also refer to.
So Rob,
Yes.
Sorry, and not to interject, but the only challenge I'm having is that you're referring to an item that's no longer on the agenda.
Correct. But new business would be, Jamie, to put it on the agenda, essentially, to go ahead with 2 docks that are proposed where there are no changes.
Okay, so that new business, as you're aware, so you would seek a counselor right now to put it on new business because it's actually, and I'm trying not to interrupt you, but so if you wanted to ask if there's a counselor willing to do that, failing that, you've kind of put some comments out that aren't on the agenda. And so we'll go right now to all canvas, if that's all right with you, if there's a counselor that's willing to move it as new business.
Absolutely.
So, anybody looking to do that on council? Okay, so
I'm not moving anything. I just think, can you guys hear me?
yeah.
Okay, I just think there is a lot, obviously this was taken out of the agenda because it was said by Councillor Lisa Wilder that we need some more information. So I don't think right now that's the place and time for us to discuss this subject without seeking further information that we're looking at. I would just advise that. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. So I'm not seeing a mover and a seconder.
Just to clarify, nobody is interested in that, and that would be correct. Okay. Well, you know what? The comments, Jamie, you can just edit.
Just 1 second, Rob.
Yeah. Can I?
You're saying that nobody's interested in that. That's not what I said. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do, and it's a delicate balance. It's not on the agenda right now, and it was amended, and you started to speak on it, and out of respect, I wanted to kind of find a place to interject without cutting you off, right? And appreciate what you've done. You looked, you signaled, but I think it's important that where council, an individual or 2 individuals may not take you up on that we don't infer why not. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say, and you've said it. So but I think there's probably a different view with council, but it's like not on the table for business right now.
Okay,
and it was removed.
That's fine. I apologize for that, and you could just edit that out of this video. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, in fairness, Rob, I appreciate, I was just trying to figure out how we handle that. So, and we won't edit it out, but.
And just a point, we don't edit videos. We don't edit videos of council. Just pointing that out. Thanks.
Okay. So, John?
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to say that for this workshop coming up regarding docks, I wondered if planned.
Well, I'm going to actually, if I can, this is a second speaker right now that's now speaking to motion that is not on the agenda, was amended with deliberation by council. So I'm going to ask that you hold all questions in reserve to a time it comes back. Okay? So if there are questions on anything that is on this agenda, I would be pleased to receive those.
Thank you. No, just I understand that this matter is being postponed to the workshop. Just wondered if the plan 2020 could be corrected before the next workshop, so we can.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. I think I may not have been clear. I may not have been articulate, but you're commenting on something right now that is not on the agenda. It has not been put on by new business. So I'm gonna ask you one more time, please. Do you have something, a question for something that's on the agenda? If you do, please go ahead, but there's not a fourth call.
Thank you. So I assume I reserve my question until the end of the meeting?
Well, you reserve it till the time it comes up and it's on agenda, please.
I mean, by the end of this meeting, at the end of the public question period.
No. Thank you, John.
So we no longer have public question periods?
We have a public question period, but this isn't on the agenda and it was moved. And in fairness, we went through one person and I tried to give some leeway and I appreciate it. But 3 times, it's not on the agenda. It's not there to be asked. It was moved off the agenda. So sorry, let me just look at Jim Chisholm and then Deborah Struck.
Oh, hi, it's Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
I did notice, I need a little clarification here. In the last Monday's meeting, special meeting, some of the comments that I made were not on the tape. And so if they don't edit, how did that happen? And I noticed Robert Begg spoke as well, and he wasn't on either.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, so it was, I don't know if it was just
I'm gonna watch it.
a glitch in the system or what, but something went wrong because my comments were all, not all of them, but the very end, what I was saying, and then when Robert Begg spoke. So.
Sherry, was it at the very end of the meeting?
No, it was around number 38 on the recording.
Okay.
I'm gonna look into this because I want to see. I've never seen this happening before. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. Deborah?
I just want to say for anybody who has questions and can't ask questions, everybody is always free to write a letter to staff and council anytime and hand it in, and it's in print. So there you go.
Yep. Appreciate that. Okay. So any questions for things that are on the agenda? Okay, then it would be appropriate for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Wilder, Councillor Clark.
I'll second that.
Oh. Okay, I think let me. just
Carolina
check.
seconded.
Many seconders today.
All right.
Yeah, so it was,
I'll third it then.
okay. Thank you. So any discussion on the motion to adjourn?
No.
Seeing none?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody will adjourn at 9:38. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Everybody, good night.
Good night.
I just wanted to see if the microphone worked.